Wow, what a beautiful film. It is with my greatest pleasure and honor to give the warmest welcome to the brilliant Wayne Wang, our director, producer, Florence Sloan, and the wonderful novelist, Lisa See. Please welcome them to the stage.
While we're getting set up, I want to thank you all for coming here, and I want to thank our panelists very much for being here as well, and especially Dean Schwartz for putting together this wonderful evening. So just a quick round of applause for Dean Schwartz. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce you to our guests this evening. First, we're very honored to have producer Florence Sloan here, who's the co-founder and CEO of Big Feet Productions, which she formed in 2010 with her partner, Wendy Murdoch. She's the author of a number of children's books and has worked also as a freelance writer of lifestyle and special interest columns for a wide variety of magazines. Ms. Sloan was born in Malaysia and spent much of her life in London before she moved to Los Angeles with her husband and UCLA alum, Harry Sloan, who's the former chairman and CEO of MGM Studios and the current chairman and CEO of Global Eagle Acquisitions. Mrs. Sloan is also a devoted philanthropist and is particularly committed to the arts and social services. We're also very honored to have director Wayne Wang here, who was born and raised in Hong Kong and moved to the States at age 17. His 1982 film, Chan is Missing, which is one of my favorites, established his reputation as a filmmaker of substance and great artistry. He is best known for his 1993 film, The Joy Luck Club, and 2002's Made in Manhattan, as well as the independent features Smoke from 1995 and Anywhere But Here from 1999. At the 2007 Toronto International Film Festival, Wang premiered two feature films, 1,000 Years of Good Prayers and The Princess of Nebraska. Throughout his career, Wang has consistently demonstrated that he is one of the most versatile and compelling directors working today. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce writer Lisa See, who's the author of the critically acclaimed and international bestseller, Snowflower and the Secret Fan, which was published in 2005. Ms. See was born in Paris, but grew up in Los Angeles. Her first book, On Gold Mountain, The 100-Year Odyssey of My Chinese-American Family, published in 1995, traced the journey of her great-grandfather, Fong See, who overcame obstacles throughout his life to become the patriarch of a sprawling family and the godfather of Los Angeles' Chinatown. She then was inspired to write fiction and has since published 7 novels, including 3 mysteries. Her most recent novel, Dreams of Joy, was published earlier this year and debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So welcome. I'd like to begin by asking you, the 3 of you, to talk a little bit about the creative collaboration between you and how this project came into development and what the process was like of creative collaboration.
I think I'll probably start with this. After we bought the rights from Lisa, Wendy and I approached Wayne, and really, in a nutshell, how we collaborated was the fact that this is Wendy and I, this is our first movie, so we didn't know all that much, and literally I just stuck to Wayne like a leech. Just having to absorb everything that he knew. But I think we discussed a lot of things in Wayne. We discussed the budget, we discussed the script, we discussed the cast, and so we definitely did have a collaboration that way. And Lisa was very, very helpful with the script and also with the history, because Wayne was very, very adamant that everything has to be authentic. So the costumes, the new shoe, the foot binding, and Lisa was an enormous help in that.
I had read the book independently, and I loved the book. And then I found out that Wendy and Florence were developing the script already, and then we teamed up from there. I talked to Lisa on and off through this whole process. She was always kind of like the guidepost for us. Because I think one of the things that we did was introduce a contemporary story which does not exist in the book, which is a tricky thing to do. And we were just speaking at dinner tonight whether we should have done it or not. It'd be interesting to see it without it, but it's there. So But you know, Lisa and I actually spoke quite a bit about, you know, adding this new element to it. Yeah.
I read every version of the script. I told them exactly what I thought. They either listened to me or they didn't.
More so one than the other, do you think?
What do you think?
There were points where you were supportive. There were points where you were very critical, which was good, which then made all of us sort of look at it carefully and, you know, turn around and try to do something better or different.
That's right. Just kind of looked at it in a different way. Because sometimes when you're so involved with something, you know, you get so close to it. So when Lisa gave us her critique, if you like, then, you know, we managed to get into a different direction at times, and that was very helpful.
What drew you to the story initially that you wanted to option the book?
You know, it really spoke to me because of my Chinese heritage. I wasn't born in China. I was born in Malaysia, but I just felt, wow, you know, my Chinese ancestors went through all these experiences, you know, with the foot binding and with the language and, you know, praying that they bear sons. You know, it was all kind of really struck a chord in me. And I just felt that somebody should make this into a movie. And then Wendy and I were good friends, and we started talking about it. She had read the book independently of me. And we started talking about it, and she said, you know, yes, somebody should make this into a movie. And somehow somebody became us.
And was it difficult to get the rights to the book?
Well, Lisa came to meet me before she would actually, you know, let me have the option to buy the rights. And we met, and she interviewed me. I think and I understand, I mean, this is her baby, you know, this book. She has spent so much time on it. It's such a beautiful, beautiful book. And she wanted to make sure that Wendy and I will take good care of the story and really portray it the way that she wanted us to. And I think we did. Did we not? Lisa, did we not?
Yes.
And
sure.
so I'm curious about this story and how it developed as a novel, since it is clearly very different from the adaptation for the film. Can you tell us a little bit about the writing process and where the story came from?
Well, so I had reviewed a book for the LA Times on the history of foot binding, and in that book was a 3 or 4 page mention of the secret language, and I just became obsessed. And, you know, some people in their spare time, they'll go out, you know, to a movie. but I just was obsessed, and I live very close to here. I would spend time looking on the internet to see what I could see. At that time, almost nothing. There were like 3 things on the whole internet. But I also would come over here to the research library, and I found some stuff there. They had there have been 2 dissertations published on Nushu, not published, but, you know, bound. And one of them, they have a copy of it here. And so everything that I looked at, it just built my obsession. It didn't calm it down until finally I just said to my husband one day, you know, honey, there's only one thing I can do. I've got to go to China and see what I can see. And so I did travel to Jianyang, which is in southwestern Hunan province. I was told I was only the 2nd foreigner ever to go there. By my count, I was the 5th, but only the 2nd Caucasian-looking foreigner. And I got to meet the oldest living Nushu writer. She was 96 years old. Tiny little woman, had bound feet, could no longer make bound foot shoes because her hands were so crippled by arthritis. Could no longer buy them, of course. And so she wore child-sized kung fu slippers with Kleenex stuffed in the toes. And she talked about the time before her feet were bound, what it was like to have her feet bound, what it was like to be part of a sworn sisterhood, different than the Lao Tong relationship, what it was like to be married outside unseen into her husband's family, and then, of course, what this secret language had meant to her over 96 years. And on my way back out of China, and this was a very, very hard trip, I had one night in the city of Guilin, and I just had this voice in my head that was a little bit of my grandmother, a little bit of my great aunt, a little bit of Yang Wanying, the woman in the village. And it was so strong that I pulled out my laptop and wrote the first chapter.
Wow.
And I really hadn't known until that moment that I was going to write a novel.
Oh, that's really fascinating. And you filmed a lot in China, and there's this wonderful wonderful quote from Harper's Bazaar that I think the audience would appreciate. They said, in traditional indie style, Murdoch and Sloan got their hands dirty, doing everything from serving cups of tea from craft services to roughing it with the crew on a frigid midwinter shoot in a tiny town in the Chinese countryside. That sounds fascinating. Can you talk about your experience filming in China?
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, but it was very challenging. I think I'll put it that way. The movie business in itself is a very tough and demanding business anyway. And shooting in China kind of just gave us more challenges because it was a foreign country. So we had to converse in a foreign language. We had to learn rules and regulations in a foreign language, so that made it more difficult. And Hengdian, where we filmed all the traditional scenes that you saw, those beautiful, beautiful traditional scenes, it really was a revelation, I think, very much to Wayne and myself. It was hard. It was hard, and I remember it being so cold that I would put on every single item of clothing that I had in Hengdian, and literally I looked like a polar bear because I had so many layers of clothing on me. It was just so cold, and sleeping in a ski jacket, that was a first for me, and I hope my last. But it was it was very interesting though. At the end of the day, I think Wendy, myself, and Wayne, I think we learned a lot from this experience. And the next time, if we go back to Hengdian, I think we'd be better prepared. I think.
Well, it's also their version of Universal Studios. It's an amusement park, which they literally make it into an amusement park with these sets there. So in the middle of a shooting, you would hear people screaming over the Ferris wheel rides, or a volcano exploding, and there was nothing we could do. There was also a tour guide walking through with tourists saying, "This is Snowflower filming here," and there was absolutely nothing we could do. So it was kind of an interesting mix of different things. Yeah.
But may I ask a question? The film is just coming out in England, I think, today, right? Or this week?
On
Tomorrow.
Friday.
Anyway, I just did an interview today with The Guardian, and it was one of the most interesting interviews, and he asked a question I actually didn't know the answer to. So I promised I would ask it and write it back to him tonight. And you mentioned rules and regulations and all of that, and I think that there have been questions about censorship in China and how easy is it to film in China and how much did they look at the script and whatnot. But his question was very specific, which was, did you add the modern story as a way to tell people in China today how to live by learning from the past in a kind of a Confucian way? And was that also a way to get past the censors there? So two-part question.
It wasn't a way to pass the censors there.
No, because you already had that before you even went.
Yeah, but I just saw the end of the film again, and I haven't seen it in a while. And I think there's something subconsciously working with me, at least, that's important about the modern day, in that the more younger Chinese, especially ones born after the 80s, I think they have very little connection to the past. And that's why I made Sophia be connected to the great-great-grandmother, and she wrote the book, and the book was about the past, and the final narration was all about learning from the past. Because for me, subconsciously, I think I felt that it was important for the Chinese audience to understand that they do have a very strong history, and that history is important to them. And some of that could very well be censored, the history itself, not the film. So,
Do you feel that more as a Chinese American director?
I
taking
feel
over
that
here.
more.
No, this is great. Go for
I
it.
feel that more as a Chinese American director because I have the luxury to do it. I don't think as a Chinese director I would be even thinking that. And I know because of the censorship, I couldn't go head on with that. I mean, the previous film I made was called A Thousand Years of Good Prayers and Princess of Nebraska, and they also dealt with that subject. But this one is in a more indirect way dealing with it, and it showed to a large audience in China. So that to me is important. I don't know whether it comes across or not, but obviously it did to the Guardians.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
but he's the first one. I mean, it's
He's
the
the
first
first
time
one.
I've
To
gotten that
actually ask
question.
that.
yeah.